Caitlin Clark has never played slow, not in high school, not at Iowa, and certainly not in the WNBA. Her game thrives on space, speed, and instinct. But Team USA, under the guidance of Carol Lawson, is marching in a different direction. The contrast couldn't be more stark. Clark's breakneck tempo versus Lawson's methodical execution. And while Clark has already proven she can lead a team with her shot-making and playmaking, her exclusion suggests that raw firepower isn't enough when the system demands structure over spontaneity. The decision might be strategic, but it's no less stunning.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
International basketball isn't just another level, it's another language. Physicality rules, the pace tightens, and every possession counts more. That's why Lawson's selection strategy favors players with experience and defensive versatility, like De'Erica Hamby, even if it means leaving off a scoring phenom. For Clark, it's a harsh introduction to how the highest levels of competition prioritize cohesion over star appeal. And for Team USA, the gamble is clear. Lean into control or risk brilliance that doesn't conform. Team USA left Caitlin Clark off the roster. And whether you support the move or think it's a massive miscalculation, it's impossible to deny what it means. A decision this bold, this polarizing, is bigger than one name missing from a list. It's about philosophy, identity, and how Team USA wants to win. If they want to win with the game evolving or by sticking to what's worked in the past. Let's call it what it is, a system-first decision. Not a slight, not a snub based on stats or spotlight. It's a choice rooted in fit. Coach Carol Lawson is building this roster with a clear preference. Slow the game down, win on the defensive end, and lean into structure. Every move since she stepped into this role has pointed in that direction. And Clark, for all her explosiveness, is the exact opposite of that direction. She plays fast. She thrives in chaos. She pulls defenders 30 feet from the basket. Her tempo doesn't just push, it forces adjustments. It's a style that worked wonders at Iowa and is already making waves in the WNBA. But in Lawson's world, that's not the game plan. Lawson's background at Duke centered around control. Her coaching identity is about patience, half-court defense, and wearing teams down, not outscoring them. And on the international stage, that approach often wins. So when Team USA made the call to go with experience, versatility, and defensive chemistry, Clark became the outlier. Not because she isn't talented, but because she doesn't fit the system. That's the harsh truth of international basketball. It's not the WNBA. It's not the NCAA. It's slower, more physical. The space closes quicker. The contact goes uncalled. The game is stripped of glamour. You don't just throw a scorer into that environment and expect fireworks. And for Team USA, winning gold isn't about showcasing flash. It's about efficiency, about cohesion. And right now, Lawson's system doesn't seem built to accommodate a high-volume, ball-dominant scorer who isn't known for her defensive impact. Clark's exclusion mirrors the decisions we've seen before. In previous Olympic cycles, stars were passed over in favor of glue players. That's how Hamby made the team over other high-scoring names. That's how role players who understand spacing, switching, and screens end up playing pivotal roles while highlight makers watch from home. And in Lawson's mind, that formula is tested. It's safe. It's not exciting, but it's functional. Still, the fallout is hard to ignore. Because this isn't just any player getting cut. This is Caitlin Clark, Rookie of the Year, assist leader, and the most talked about name in women's basketball. Leaving her off the roster doesn't just shake the team, it shakes the narrative. It challenges everything about what we value in a player. Because Clark's impact goes far beyond the court. She draws crowds. She changes ratings. She brings new fans into arenas. And now, she's not on the biggest stage women's basketball has to offer. And that opens up a new line of criticism. Because if Team USA falters, if they struggle to create offense, if games come down to one possession and no one's creating their own shot, the questions won't be about who played. They'll be about who didn't. They'll be about the shooter who wasn't there. The passer who could have made the difference. The momentum swinger left off the floor entirely. Lawson and USA Basketball are betting on system compatibility over raw talent. They're doubling down on chemistry, defense, and low-risk, high-efficiency players. And if it works, they'll be praised for sticking to their principles. But if it doesn't, the Clark omission becomes the headline. It becomes the story. This is where the debate gets messy. Because for all of Clark's talent, she isn't a two-way player, at least not yet. Her defense isn't elite. Her turnovers can spike. And in a tightly structured environment, that kind of unpredictability can be costly. Coaches building international rosters want dependability. They want plug-and-play pieces. And Clark doesn't plug in. She takes over. But here's the other side of that. Sometimes you need someone who takes over. In a close semifinal against France or Australia, when defenses are grinding possessions down and the offense goes cold, you need a player who can change the temperature. Someone who can pull up from the logo. Someone who can collapse a defense and find a shooter in the corner. That's what Clark brings. It's not about fitting into a scheme. It's about breaking the game open when the scheme isn't enough. Her exclusion doesn't just cap the team's offensive ceiling. It changes the way the team can respond under pressure. And it's not just about one game. It's about momentum. It's about flexibility. And it's about the reality that no system survives a tournament without facing adversity. That's the risk Team USA is taking. They're choosing predictability over potential, stability over spark. And it's understandable. It's defendable. But it comes at a cost. Because when you pass on generational talent in favor of system loyalty, you're also telling future players what matters more, fitting in or standing out. This moment will ripple, not just through the rest of Clark's career, but through the pipeline of players watching her trajectory. Young players who mold their game around scoring and creativity are going to take notice. The message right now is clear. If you want to make Team USA, you better be willing to sacrifice your game for the system. Because if you don't fit the mold, you're not getting the call, no matter how many headlines you generate. That's what makes this decision so impactful. It's not just a question of Clark being good enough. It's a question of whether Team USA is willing to evolve. And based on this roster, the answer is no. They're not ready to hand the keys to a new era of basketball. Not yet. But Clark isn't going anywhere. She's only going to get better. And if this exclusion motivates her, if it fuels her WNBA dominance, then it might become the turning point in her arc. The kind of moment that reshapes careers. The kind of slight that doesn't fade, it sharpens. And whether Team USA wins gold or not, this decision will stick. It'll be remembered. Because for once, the biggest name in the sport wasn't on the biggest stage. Not because she didn't belong, but because she didn't fit. So what's your take? Did Team USA make the right call? Is this a smart strategy move or a missed opportunity? Should the system evolve around new talent? Or should talent be reshaped to serve the system? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you think the game is changing. Share it if you think Clark deserves her moment. And hit subscribe, because the story isn't over. In fact, it's just getting started. Caitlin Clark is everywhere. In a news cycle, on highlight reels, in WNBA arenas packed with fans wearing her jersey. But there's one place she won't be this summer, the Team USA roster. And now, as the dust settles on this decision, it's becoming clear just how much weight it carries. Not just for Clark, but for USA basketball, for women's sports, and for how talent is measured against philosophy. Because here's the thing, this isn't just about numbers. Clark's stats speak for themselves. Rookie of the Year, leading the league in assists, breaking records, lifting attendance. She's already shifted the entire visibility of the WNBA. But when Team USA sat down to build its Olympic roster, those accomplishments weren't enough. Not because they didn't matter, but because they didn't fit. Coach Carol Lawson has built her reputation on discipline, defense, and structure. Her system is about control. It's not flashy, but it's effective, especially in international play, where physicality is heightened and the margin for error is small. And that system? It doesn't leave a lot of room for improvisers. 4 high-risk, high-reward players. 4 wildcard scorers who operate outside the lines of the set playbook. Clark is the kind of player who can score 30 on any night. But she's also the kind who might take shots that aren't system approved. She plays with instinct, with flair, and with freedom. That freedom doesn't always mesh with the tight reins of international coaching. So what Lawson did was simple. She chose certainty. She chose players she knows will execute her plan, not question it. Players who might not bring the same spotlight, but who bring consistency. Players who will play defense the way she wants, run sets the way she designs, and communicate on switches without improvising off script. And it's hard to argue with that on paper, because international basketball is tough. Opponents like France, Spain, and Australia aren't just showing up, they're coming to win. They're strong, physical, and cohesive. The risk of losing isn't theoretical, it's very real. So Lawson built a team she trusts. But here's the problem with playing it safe. Sometimes, safe can't save you. Because basketball doesn't always go as planned. Systems break. Defenses crack. Game plans collapse under pressure. That's when you need players who can create something out of nothing. That's when you need someone like Caitlin Clark. When a shot clock is at 5 and the set didn't work, who's pulling up from the logo? When a team is down 8 and stuck in a scoring drought, who's flipping momentum with back-to-back threes and a coast-to-coast N1? That's where the absence of Clark becomes not just a tactical gap, but a philosophical one. USA Basketball didn't just leave a player at home. They left a game changer, and now they have to live with that. The pressure is officially on, because if the team wins gold, everything gets validated. The coaching philosophy, the roster choices, the commitment to structure. But if they fall short, even by a possession or two, this decision becomes the headline. Not the loss, not the defense. This, Clark not being there. Because the public narrative has already formed. Clark was ready. And Team USA didn't want what she offered. Even if that's not the full story, that's what people believe. And belief, especially in sports, is powerful. So now, USA Basketball is walking a very thin line. And it's not just about performance. It's about public perception. And Caitlin Clark? She's not spiraling over this. She's not fading away. She's already proving, game after game, that this exclusion isn't a setback, it's motivation. She's still filling arenas, still dropping dimes, still leading huddles, still taking deep threes that made jaws. She doesn't need a jersey with USA stitched across the front to validate her value. She's doing that on her own court, in front of thousands of fans who showed up to see her. And maybe that's what stings most for Team USA. Not that Clark didn't make the roster, but that they didn't get to benefit from the wave she's creating. Because what she brings isn't just points and assists. It's energy, buzz, momentum. She doesn't just light up the scoreboard. She lights up the entire conversation around women's basketball. And when a player is capable of doing that, leaving them off your Olympic roster doesn't just look like a tactical decision. It starts to look like a misstep, one that could haunt you when the pressure's highest. And look, it's not that the current roster isn't strong. Players like Aya Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu are battle-tested and brilliant. They deserve their spots. They've earned their stripes. But the question isn't about whether they belong. It's about whether the roster has the range it needs to weather the toughest moments. Whether it has a true chaos agent, a player who can bend the game when the system tightens up and the rhythm dies. Right now, it doesn't. And if those moments come, and they usually do, Team USA better hope their structure holds. Because if it doesn't, the whispers will start. The what-ifs, the commentary, the post-game analysis pointing to the one player who could have flipped the script. Caitlin Clark didn't get cut because she wasn't good enough. She got cut because the system wasn't built to include her. And that's the real story here. It's not about talent. It's about translation. How a player like Clark fits, or doesn't, into a strategy that values defense over disruption. And that strategy might work. But if it doesn't, the receipts are already printed. What this moment proves more than anything is that the divide between system fit and star power is real and widening. Clark represents where the game could go. Lawson's roster reflects where the team wants to stay. And the question hanging over all of it is simple. Will Team USA move forward with the future or continue leaning on the past? What we're watching right now is a collision, a head-on crash between legacy basketball politics and a rapidly evolving game that's being reshaped in real time. At the center of that crash, Caitlin Clark. And this Team USA decision, it didn't just create headlines. It exposed a generational divide in how the women's game is being built, sold, and played. Because you can't talk about Caitlin Clark without acknowledging what she's done in a very short amount of time. She didn't just arrive in the WNBA, she ignited it. She's pulling in numbers that are unprecedented for women's hoops. Sold-out arenas, record-breaking viewership, merchandise sales through the roof. Every game she plays becomes a cultural moment. She's not just a rising star. She's the star. And still no spot on Team USA's Olympic roster. Now let's be crystal clear. Team US, it doesn't owe anyone a jersey. Not even Caitlin Clark. This isn't about handing out medals for popularity. It's about winning. About strategy. About putting together a team that can bring home the gold in the most competitive international field we've seen in years. But when you strip away the emotion and get to the core of the decision, it wasn't about whether Clark could help the team. It was about whether she could help the system. And that's where it all breaks down. Because right now, the system isn't designed for her. Not under Carol Lawson's philosophy. Not in the slow, defense-heavy scheme being prioritized for this Olympic run. Clark is movement. She's creativity. She's pace, unpredictability, deep-range shot-making, and tempo control. Lawson's playbook leans conservative, emphasizing discipline, execution, and proven two-way contributors who won't freelance off-script. And when you stack those identities side by side, the conflict is obvious. Clark doesn't fit the mold. And instead of shifting the mold to fit the future, USA basketball doubled down on the status quo. That's the real story here. Not a snub, not a scandal, but a conscious choice to say no to change. At least for now. Because if Team USA was building a team around firepower, Clark's name would have been among the first locked in. But they're building around containment, around control, around muscle and maturity and trust. That's why Hamby made it last time. That's why names like Wilson, Stewart, and Gray feel automatic. They're predictable, efficient, system-first players. But what they're not is transformational. And that's the trade-off. You lose the volatility, but you also lose the upside. And when international teams come with more weapons, better scouting, and no fear of Team USA's legacy, you can't rely on structure alone to get you through. You need spark. You need a moment maker. And if this tournament turns into a grind, and Team USA needs a player who can create out of thin air, Clark's absence is going to be impossible to ignore. Because here's what doesn't go away: her ability to change a game. Not with brute force or rigid playbooks, but with instinct. She sees the court differently. She manipulates space. She commands double teams from the moment she crosses half court. She doesn't just run plays, she breaks them open. And that's exactly the kind of weapon you want when nothing else is working. But Lawson doesn't want to wait until nothing else is working. Her strategy is to make sure it always works by never letting the chaos in. That's what system-first coaching does. It builds predictability. It controls variance. It limits surprises. But it also limits possibility. And Clark is possibility. She represents the version of the game that doesn't follow tradition. The one that forces systems to adapt, not the other way around. She's not a product of the mold. She's what breaks it. And right now, that's not what Team USA is looking for. Not in this. The message is clear. Until you can fit us, we're not changing for you. But here's the twist: they're going to have to. Because the game is changing. Not 5 years from now. Not next generation. Right now, Clark's style isn't fringe anymore. It's influencing young players, shifting defenses, and forcing coaches across the WNBA to rethink their own systems. The pace is increasing. The spacing is evolving. And star players are expected to do more with less time, less room, and more pressure. You can see it happening in real time. And while USA basketball might have missed this wave, the rest of the world hasn't. Other countries are adapting. Other federations are making room for dynamic scorers, multi-positional playmakers, and guards who can go off-script without blowing up the team. And as that shift continues, Team USA risks being the only team still holding on to a rigid blueprint that was written for a version of the game that no longer exists. Because no matter how deep the tradition runs, eventually, even gold medal legacies hit a wall. So when Clark was left off the roster, it didn't just feel like a tactical move, it felt like a warning. That the people building the most dominant program in women's basketball history might be too committed to the past to fully embrace the future. And that's where this really lands. Caitlin Clark's omission isn't just a headline. It's a moment of reckoning. A chance to ask, what kind of basketball does Team USA want to play? Is it the kind that protects the system, no matter how much talent it excludes? Or is it the kind that evolves with the game and lets the best players reshape the strategy? Because there's no question anymore that Clark is among the best. The conversation is no longer about if she's good enough. It's about whether the system is ready to make space for the kind of player she is. Right now, the answer is no. But this decision won't define her. It'll only fuel her. Because Clark isn't just a star on the rise. She's the future of the sport. And the future doesn't wait. So what happens next? USA Basketball will move forward with their plan. They'll play their pace. They'll lean on their system. And maybe they'll win. But if they lose, even once, even barely, the conversation will immediately snap back to this decision. Because in this moment, what's been said, loud and clear, is that system still outweighs talent. That tradition still outranks transformation. But how long can that last? How long can the system ignore a player that keeps proving she's more than just marketable? She's uncontainable. Let us know where you stand. Should Team USA have made room for Caitlin Clark? Does this decision reflect a smart coaching philosophy or a fear of letting the game evolve? Drop your take in the comments. Like the video if you believe basketball should be built around brilliance, not just blueprints. Share it with someone who's been watching this saga unfold from start. And hit subscribe, because Caitlin Clark's story isn't stopping at this roster cut. It's only getting louder from here.